So who invented these terms for rock hunting anyway? In Australia, they call it faceting. What? In the US, we call it rock hounding. I don't know, but for me, I'd rather my American neighbors be saying, yeah, on weekends, Mike becomes a rock hound, instead of some Australian neighbor saying, yeah, mate, our neighbor Mike is a fussicker, and he fussicks all weekend long. But hey, that's just me. Faceting. Someone from Australia, if you know, let me know in the comments how the heck that term came about. I like rock hounding. So there are many places in the U.S. to go rock hounding. And if I state of North Carolina, wow, tons of places for rock hounds. And at our store, BOPIE often meets someone who brings in their, rock hunting finds. Normally they have a bucket full of very, very large gem specimens. Normally amethyst, citrine, clear quartz, garnets, topaz. Those are the most often found gems around our area, and the specimens are impressive. Unfortunately, there always seems to be some mine owner or quarry owner, wherever they went, faceting, who unfortunately told them, wow, that is going to cut a beautiful gemstone. Well, I don't want to be the one who bursts your bubble, but the fact is, usually, almost all the time, the specimen you found is going to be heavily included and just not going to cut into a flawless, beautiful gemstone. Now there are exceptions, especially on the west coast in Oregon, where if you go hunting in the right locations for Oregon sunstone, you've got a very good chance of finding a valuable gemstone. Montana for sapphires, yeah, same thing. Outside of that, in the U.S., well, basically just enjoy the time you spent rock hounding, enjoy that special day, enjoy the memories you will always have of being out in that mine or quarry hunting or faceting. It was time well spent with your family, friends, and loved ones. I would recommend you get out there and go gem hunting, but know what you found, outside of Oregon, Montana, a couple other places, is probably just best left to put on your mantle, uncut as a specimen and as a remembrance of the awesome time you spent out faceting with the people you love. Good times. So BOPIE has asked me to try my best to facet a gemstone from one of her clients' many awesome amethyst specimen finds from around North Carolina. I've never tried to cut one of these stones and don't know if it can be faceted. Part of me is thinking the stone will just fall apart as I try to cut it because of all the internal fractures and inclusions that you can see. But hey, I agreed to give it a try, no charge, for our friend, so here goes. Okay, we've got this piece of amethyst that client found out rock hunting, and he wants it faceted, so it's more than, my scale only goes up to 20 grams, which is 100 carats. This is a lot more than that, so I don't know exactly how much it weighs. It's a big piece. Let's get some light into it, see if it's pretty much not facet grade. Maybe it's cabochon grade. Let me get my mag light to look through it. It's fractured throughout. It's not clean. You can see that with light. So it's not something I would normally cut, but we get a lot of customers who find beautiful stones and want to remember the event, who they were with when they were out enjoying the day out rock hunting. So we're going to see what we can do. This stone is approximately 47.5 millimeters by approximately 46.97. The shape, in my opinion, looks to me like a triangle shape-ish. If I were to cut it, would be the best cut to use. So we'll look at a signature number 4 by Jeff Graham and see what it's like to cut something that's between a rock and a facetable facet stone. So if we are going to use the signature number 4, the length to width ratio on Jeff Graham's diagram for signature number 4 trillion is 1.016. So the length times 1.016 tells you what you need for the width. So if we use, say, 40 for the length, we would need 40.6 for the width. So do we have it, the right length to width ratio? Thinking not really, if the angles they're not really a perfect triangle. May not be able to get a 40, so let me work with this to see what kind of makes sense. I don't know. 36 and 36 times our length to width ratio would mean a 36.576 or a 36.58. Close enough for figuring out how to rough it out, and could do that. It's possible. It's maybe, depending on again, I'm worried about the angles, but it looks like maybe 36 is what I could draw maybe on the stone and then preform it, trim it, and at least have a preform of something to start with. See where we're at with that. Let's give that a try. This was the smallest amethyst that our friend found while rock hunting. After thinking over, this stone is simply way too big for me to facet. It would probably take me several weeks to cut this stone because of its size, and it would eat up my laps trying to grind it down to shape. So I'm going to cut a smaller piece off of this stone with my trim saw and try to facet a more manageable piece. It will still be a large gemstone when I'm done. I'll shoot for a gemstone in the 12mm range so that if the client later wants to put the stone into a pendant, he can. Again, this is really, it's more of a test to see if the stone can be faceted at all, or if it just will fall to pieces in the attempt. So there's no need to try to cut a doorknob just for this test. Okay, the trim saw I use is from Ameritools, and the way I use it is you take off the cover. I use a sintered blade, which has diamonds embedded in it, so when the first layer gets ground down, the next layer is exposed. I put water in the reservoir just so it covers the very bottom of the blade, so that as it's rotating it picks up water to cool it. That's all you need, and we're set to cut. I'm going to use my favorite trillion design called Signature Number 4 for this gemstone. This design was created by the late Jeff Graham, one of my favorite gem cut designers. Jeff put about 36 of his favorite designs into the public domain for all gem cutters to freely use. In a previous video, I show you step by step how to go into the internet back in time to Jeff's now closed website and retrieve those designs he made available to the public. And here's the video where I show you how to access Jeff's old site. Okay, I cut a piece off of our local rock-hounded piece of amethyst. The big piece, I cut a piece off, and then I cut the piece in half because this is way too thick, too big. So I have a nice piece to cut, well, a nice shaped sized piece to cut. If you look in the stone, I mean, there's fractures, the zoning, but we're gonna try. We're gonna see how this facets. That's a black magic marker, permanent marker, don't worry about that. So, all right, we're ready to put it on the dot. When I'm finished cutting this piece of rough, if everything works out and the stone does not disintegrate during the faceting process, the final gemstone should look like this from the top, side, and bottom. Again, all the information on how to cut Jeff's Signature Number 4 are available to the public. Just see my other video on how to access that information. Okay, for our, I guess we'll call it our rock hounding find of amethyst. For us to cut our Signature Number 4, we set the stone in the Ultratech by putting a flat side, kind of the longest side being this way. The design calls for a length to width of 1.016. So it's really, there's pretty much equals triangular size, but anyway, one flat side goes at the 96 index. So we've got it set in, we've got it ready to go, and now we'll see how it works to facet a rock-hounded piece of amethyst. I'll start with using a 360 topper on my ceramic lap. I won't use anything rougher than a 360, 200 series, 100, probably just crack this stone to pieces. So we'll start with 360 and see how that works. Okay, I've made the first row of facets along the pavilion of our Signature Number 4 stone, trillion. And I've preformed the girdle as well. And what we're finding is what we expect. It's a fractured, included stone that I don't know if it can be faceted or not. That's our test. I'll keep an open mind, but it's certainly not going to end up with a clean stone. But we'll continue to work on this with the other rows along the top and the girdle. Okay, for our rock hounding find of Amethyst, I finished cutting it, preforming it with the 360. Now I'll go to the 600 grit diamond. And the good news is it hasn't fallen apart, but as you can see, it's heavily included. So we'll keep working at it and see what this stone turns out to look like. Okay, I finished with the 600 grit diamond grit on our Amethyst kind of rock hound stone, and now I'll go over it with the 1200 grit diamond. All right, I'm ready to polish the pavilion, or the bottom half of our trillion, with our rock hounded found stone. So I'm not going to use the dark side lap, and the reason is because I don't want to put the cerium oxide powder or the cerium oxide bat stick, which is a powder in a solution, onto the dark side and into the stone. And the reason is that, as you can see here, when I pre-polished with the 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap, say you can see here, right there, what happens is the lap gets a kind of a black, sludgy, slurry stuff. You can see it. That's what gets in my fingernails here and drives Bopie crazy. It's because of as the diamond grit is on the lap and is grinding the stone, you kind of get a powder of black sludge. And with this stone being completely included, there's all these cracks throughout it. And what happens is what happened here. This won't be a problem because the crown's gonna, we're gonna start cutting in about there on the crown, and the rest will be cut in. So this will be cut out, but you can see that this crack just sucked in the sludge from the 3000 grit diamond. And I suppose you could clean it out. I'm sure, I don't want to mention names. Well, Boyd, I'm sure Boyd has a way to clean this out, but it's really not going to be worth it. So anyway, it won't be a problem here. But so what I'll do when I polish here is I'm just going to use my ultra laps that are diamond embedded in kind of plastic mylar and water, and they don't build up a sludge, so there won't be a bunch of sludge going into all the cracks. So we did learn something already. Okay, and again, with the 3000 grit diamond on bat lap, this has not fallen apart, although there's an awful lot of cracks. We'll see what happens when we polish the pavilion and when we get to the upper half of the stone. I finished polishing our amethyst here, so now I'll transfer the stone, the dops, and start working on the upper half for the crown of our signature number 4 trillion cut. I finished cutting the amethyst rock hounded stone with the 600 grit diamond. Now I'll move to the 1200 grit. It hasn't fallen apart. Guess that's a good sign, but there are major fractures that you can see, all along there, all along there. So I'll go over it with the 1200. Am I going to lose a piece right here? Probably. That could be problematic. It could chip out, but so far we've been lucky. We'll see what happens after the 1200 pre-polish. Okay, I finished with the 1200 grit diamond pre-polishing our amethyst here, and you can see all the fractures. I've been very lucky that, right there didn't just fall off, or all this almost half so far. So the next step would normally be a 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. However, that creates a kind of a black slurry from the mixture of the oil and the amethyst grindings and the lap. And that slurry, all these cracks, all these fractures that reach the surface, it would just suck in that black slurry. And I don't want that. So I'm gonna skip the 3000 grit. I'm going to go straight to a cerium oxide polish. I'm not going to use the dark side because that's also a slurry. I'm going to use my ultra laps, which are a mylar disposable lap with cerium oxide impregnated on it. And then we'll see how that works. Then we'll be ready to polish the table. Hopefully we won't develop any chips or major parts of the stone falling off. Although it could, you can see the fractures. Okay, you can see where it's polishing up very nicely with our ultralaps, no problems. I've got a couple more rows to go and then we'll be ready to cut and polish the table. Stone is still holding together. Okay, we're ready to cut the table on our Amethyst. I've got the tabling adapter installed on the spindle and the angle set for 45 degrees. So we're ready to start cutting our table. Okay, so I've finished polishing the table of our Amethyst. Now the next step is to get the Amethyst out of the top, get the adhesive off it. I don't want to use heat because of all these fractures inside the stone. I don't want them to cause a fracture to cause the stone to split. I mean, we could shave off, lose half the stone right there. So I'll soak it in acetone and soak it and hope that is all I need to do. We'll see how this looks once I get it off the dock. Well, I was pleasantly surprised that this stone did not simply fall apart while I was fastening it because of all the internal fractures. So the answer is yes, the stone is in fact facetable into a gemstone. However, it has numerous internal fractures and flaws, and I am not able to cut an internally flawless amethyst gemstone out of this rough. It is an included gemstone. So, should you facet the treasures you find out rock hounding? I can't answer that, only you can. There may be a lot of sentimental value to you in hunting these rocks. A very special day out with family, friends, loved ones that you want to always remember. Just realize that if you want to facet gems like this, you will end up with an included gemstone. If that is okay with you, then great. If not, then take the specimen you found and proudly display it on a mantle or a shelf or somewhere so you can always remember the great time you had rock hounding, or as the odds friends say, faceting. Happy fasting, everyone.